The rain didn't just fall that night. It roared. It was one of those nights where the sky seemed angry, hurling sheets of water down a mountainside road that twisted through the forest. A narrow bridge trembled under the force of the storm, and the sound of thunder echoed like heartbreak in the distance. In the middle of that chaos, a small pickup truck crawled up the slope. Behind the wheel sat Ethan Cole, a single father in his early 30s. His clothes were worn, his eyes tired, but his hands, strong and steady, gripped the steering wheel like a man who had learned to fight through every storm life threw his way. In the passenger seat, wrapped in a blanket, was his 7-year-old daughter Leela, sleeping peacefully despite the world falling apart outside. Ethan was used to storms, not just the ones that flooded roads, but the ones that had flooded his life years ago, when his wife Anna passed away after giving birth to Leela. Since then, it had been just him and his daughter, surviving one day at a time, working as a construction laborer, and taking whatever odd jobs he could to keep food on the table. But that night, destiny had another kind of storm waiting for him. HarCTA ones, if you believe in miracles, love, and second chances. Hit that like button, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to Kindness Universe for more powerful, heart-touching stories like this one. As Ethan drove through the mountainside shortcut toward the next town, he noticed something unusual. A sleek black SUV, half buried in mud, lights flickering weakly through the rain. He slowed down, squinting through the windshield. The sound of rocks sliding down the hill made his heart pound. It was a landslide zone. He parked the truck to the side, grabbed his flashlight, and told Leela to stay put. "Daddy will be right back, okay? Lock the doors." The moment he stepped into the downpour, cold rain lashed his face. The SUV was lodged at an angle, its back wheels half swallowed by the mud. Inside, through the cracked glass, he saw a woman, her hand pressed weakly against the window, face pale and terrified. "Hey, hang on, I'm coming!" he shouted over the thunder. He pulled at the door. It wouldn't budge. The car was pinned, mud was rising fast. Without thinking, he grabbed a crowbar from his truck and pried the door open. The woman coughed, gasping for air as water rushed inside. He reached in and pulled her out, holding her close as they stumbled through the rain. By the time they reached his truck, she was shivering uncontrollably. Leela gasped when she saw her father carrying the soaked woman and immediately helped grab a blanket. Thank you," the woman whispered, barely conscious. Ethan nodded, wrapping her tighter. "You're safe now. Just breathe." When morning came, the storm had cleared. They were parked under a small shelter near a closed-down roadside diner. The woman, whose name he learned was Clara Hastings, was the CEO of a large tech company from the city. Her car had been caught in the landslide on her way to a rural charity event. Ethan didn't know who she really was. To him, she was just a stranger who needed help. He offered her his jacket, some coffee, and made sure she could stand before planning to drive her to the nearest hospital. "You risked your life back there," Clara said quietly, watching him pack up. He shrugged. "Wouldn't anyone?" Her gaze softened. "Not everyone stops in the middle of a landslide, Mr. Cole." She didn't know that his instinct to save people came from years of losing one. He smiled faintly and turned away. "Let's get you checked out." As they drove through the morning mist, Clara found herself watching the man and his daughter with growing curiosity. There was a tenderness between them that melted through the silence. The way he reached back to adjust the blanket around Leela, the way Leela smiled sleepily at him and whispered, "Daddy, she looks like Mommy." Clara's heart stung. Something about that word, Mommy, made her chest tighten. She had lost her own family years ago to distance, ambition, and success. Money had given her everything except peace. When they reached the town's small clinic, Clara thanked Ethan again, promising to compensate him for his bravery. But he refused politely. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "I'm just glad you're safe." She smiled softly. "At least tell me your full name?" He hesitated, then replied, "Ethan Cole." From Silver Creek, Clara's eyes widened just slightly. She didn't say anything, but that name hit her. She had heard it before. That night, back in her city penthouse, Clara couldn't stop thinking about the man who had pulled her from the mud with bare hands. She opened her laptop and typed the name Ethan Cole into her company archives. And there it was. A record from 8 years ago, a file connected to a charity grant she had personally approved for an orphanage. A young construction worker named Ethan Cole had written a heartfelt letter back then, thanking her for saving the orphanage where he and his late wife used to volunteer. She had never met him in person, but his words had stayed with her, a man who believed that kindness could rebuild what tragedy destroyed. Since that day, she had been quietly searching for him, wanting to thank him for that letter that changed her life, because that letter had been the reason she started her foundation to help single parents. But she never found him. Until now. Days passed, and Clara showed up in Silver Creek unannounced. She found Ethan at a local construction site, helping rebuild homes damaged by the storm. His shirt was soaked in sweat, his hands covered in dust, but he smiled when he saw her. "Miss Hastings?" he asked, surprised. "I told you to call me Clara," she replied warmly. He chuckled awkwardly. "Didn't expect to see you here. I didn't expect to meet the man I've been searching for either," she said, her voice trembling slightly. He frowned, confused. "Searching for me?" Clara took a deep breath and held out a folded paper. The very letter he had written 8 years ago. "This, you wrote this, didn't you?" Ethan froze. He remembered every word. The night he wrote that letter to thank the anonymous donor who saved the orphanage that raised him. "I've been trying to find you," Clara continued softly, tears in her eyes. "That letter changed me. I used to think success was about winning. But your words, real wealth is what we give, not what we keep. They changed everything. I've been building my foundation on those words." Ethan's throat tightened. He didn't know what to say. "Why me?" he finally asked. Clara smiled. "Because you saved me long before you pulled me from that landslide." Over the following weeks, Clara and Ethan's lives began to intertwine. She spent time with Leela, who adored her, and slowly the lonely CEO found herself drawn to the simplicity of their world. The warmth of a small home, the laughter over pancakes, the joy in tiny things. For Ethan, Clara brought something he hadn't felt in years: hope. She began sponsoring his local rebuilding projects, turning Silver Creek into a model for community-driven change. But it wasn't just about charity, it was personal. One evening, as the sun set over the valley, Ethan stood on a half-built porch, watching Clara play catch with Leela. He smiled quietly, feeling the weight of everything he'd lost and everything he'd found again. Leela ran up to him, giggling. "Daddy, Clara said she used to be scared of storms too, but now she says they bring new beginnings." He looked at Clara, her hair catching the orange glow of sunset, her laughter echoing through the hills, and for the first time, he believed it. CTA 2. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Universe, where stories remind us that even in life's storms, kindness always finds a way home. A year later, Silver Creek bloomed again. The houses stood strong, the people hopeful. At the grand reopening of the orphanage, Clara stood beside Ethan and Leela, her hand gently finding his. "Funny," Ethan whispered, smiling. "You were the one I rescued, but somehow you ended up saving me." Clara's eyes shimmered with tears. "Maybe that's how it works. Kindness circles back." The crowd applauded as the ribbon was cut, and the sound of children laughing filled the air. Ethan looked at the sky. The same mountains that once brought destruction now stood tall beneath the sunlight. He took a deep breath and whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude. Because sometimes life doesn't send angels with wings. Sometimes it sends them trapped in the mud, waiting to be found. And sometimes they were searching for you all along,